Hey, how are we doing? Hopefully we're all good. And we've had a little request this morning for stiff lower backs. I've been in the garden. So we'll start as we usually do by laying on your back with your knees bent, soles of the feet into the floor, but thinking about stiff backs when we've been in the garden and other things that we do that put us into a prone position for a prolonged amount of time is what are we doing to put our body back in the other direction? So noticing when things are a bit stiff, noticing when things are a bit restricted because there's been work and the muscle's looking to repair itself. So we just take time to let the bones rest. And it's really important in this time that we give ourselves to the ground, that the body is allowed to find its own way. So we feel that maybe the ribs and the pelvis on the back of the body want to come towards each other a little bit. We might find that there's a softening that needs to happen in the front of the tummy. Do we need to put the shoulders back where, or the arms back in the shoulders and the shoulders back where they should be, particularly if we've been reaching forwards. So it's just allowing this time for the front of the body to reposition itself, reconnect itself around the back of the body. Because the eyes are in the front and the activities are at the front. So we spend lots of amounts of time with the limbs all kind of hanging out the front of the body. So can we trace a line from the back of the hands? If we take the hands up over the body, can we trace a line from the back of the hands around the outer side of the arm, back of the shoulder, and across the back of the body? When we do that, we start to reconnect with the shoulder blades, and they might be a bit higgledy-piggledy on the back of the body. So can we just breathe in, let the hands go up towards the ceiling, and a breath out lets the arms just sink back through their sockets and find the floor. And we might notice that one side is heavier than the other if we've got a bit of a twizzle going on through the ribs. So we just breathe in and just let the arms feel like they're being pulled up towards the sky. And then the nice breath out just lets the arms go completely. You might feel this across the collarbones. You might feel that there's a broadening that starts to happen on the collarbones. If there are hitches and glitches in the upper back part of the ribs, you just press on the front part of the ribs. And you breathe into the back of the ribs, and that will undo any tight muscles that are sitting in there. Just going to press with the feet a little bit. And just notice that when we're pressing with the feet, takes the knee away towards the end of your mat, pulls the hip open, and starts to mess around with the low spine. Can we feel that there's a space at the bottom of the ribs? And that when the feet get pulled down into the ground, that it gives us a long space to the waist. So we're starting with each knee press, takes us into something that might turn into a laying twist, although the feet are slightly in the wrong place, so maybe not, but we're just looking to feel. When we press with the big toe, you can feel the stretch in the quad on the front of the thigh. You can feel the front of the hip. And just noticing again where we need space, maybe where we need a little bit of anchorage in the opposite shoulder, perhaps if we've got one shoulder that's a bit lighter on the floor than the other. And each time we let the back of the pelvis come back down to ground, there's a little bit more space to be had in the low spine. There's a little bit more heaviness to be had in the back of the pelvis. And maybe a little bit more softness and lengthening to the rib spine. And we just keep noticing where parts of us can get a little bit heavier. When we're working hard, sometimes we take ourselves in the direction of pushing the floor away, which just puts more tension into the body. So can we take a little bit of time to reconnect? So we're feeling the sit bones and the smile at the bottom pulling down into the ground. And all we're going to do is just make the left heel super heavy and feel like somebody's got hold of the index finger knuckle on the right side. We're just going to slide the left heel away and take the right hand or the right arm up towards the top of your mat, but you're lengthening out from the solar plexus. So the big toe pulls away from the center of the body down through the hip, and the index finger knuckle pulls away from the shoulder, from the solar plexus and the front of the ribs. So we're looking to make that connection. Can be just in our mind's eye. For some of us, we feel it as a physical reality. We're coming back to center, we're just changing over sides with the left heel or right heel and the left arm. And if it's nice just to leave the heel heavy on the ground, it's really good because that helps us to find the connection of the leg through the hip into the deep waist. At the end of the pull away with the heel, if we felt like someone has got hold of our heel and is pulling it towards the end of the mat, we feel this deep pull through the inside of the hip bones, the innominate bones, and up through the front of the tummy into the underside of the ribs. So we feel that the leg pulls away and gives length to the waist. And then the leg can come back to center. So it's sending the body nice and long, but we're creating space into the spine, reconnecting the front body into the back body, and just waking up some of those connective tissues that might be laying on the front of the spine that might have got a little bit left behind if we've been working hard. So if it feels good, we can let the left knee float in towards you. Find the back of the pelvis. We don't want the pelvis rolling in towards you. That rounds the back out. We don't need that. We want heavy, heavy back of the pelvis, heavy, heavy back of the ribs. And then we find that the legs can float, but we've still got the lumbar curve. So we don't want it so deep we can drive a bus underneath it, but we also don't want to be flattening our spines into the floor either. And it's good to play with this movement, particularly if you're new to this stuff, finding the uninhibited alignment of the pelvis on the floor and finding where your true core strength is, not something that's pulling us down into the ground and changing the orientation of the bones. You can hear my voice change. But when we're allowed to relax into the hammocks of the fascia and let gravity do its job and pull us down into the ground, we can stay in these arrangements without too much effort. The limbs can hang in the sockets. So from here we can drop a heel down, and it's the opposite arm that goes up towards the top of the mat. And that just puts a little bit more challenge through the central core structures. Again, we're looking for that activation through the V shape of the ribs on the front, through the solar plexus. And again, looking to feel the connection of the legs through the pelvis. So we're never just hanging legs out of a socket, nor are we manipulating the pelvis into an arrangement which then starts to mess around with the low spine. So we don't want to do that. So we'll just do one more on each side. And then we'll just bring the legs down. Just bringing the soles of the feet together and let the knees go out to the side. So again, we're looking for that pelvis. Can we still feel the two sit bones very heavy down into the ground? And can we still pop that gravity button down through the center of the body between the ribs and the lumbars, pulling us down into the ground? The feet aren't flaccid. We've got long little toe sides of the feet that are pulling us down into the ground. The feet can open like a book, or you can press the toes together. And you can just play around with the feet meeting each other because it fires different muscles in the legs. You can feel it. So we want to feel that the long little toe sides get pulled down into the ground. That helps with any tension in the inner thighs. You press the big toes together. All helps with hip flexors at the top of the hips. And then we're just going to bring the knees back together, planting the feet into the ground. So we're going to come over onto whichever side is comfortable for you. Find your way up into square pose. So we're feeling that the big toes can get pulled away. And the front of the heels. So we're just starting to feel that the front of the ankles can start to soften. If it feels nice, we can reach back and just have a little rub around the front of the ankle. Start to encourage that to come into the floor. And then we can just use those the secondary knuckles. So not your fingertips, but not the knuckles of your hand either, your finger knuckles. And you just let them sink into the back of the knee. And it's like you're scooping some soft ice cream, because we want to be sending the shin away towards the wall behind you. So you just let your fingers sink into the tissues in the back of the knee. It's not a hard movement, but you can just notice where it might be a little bit caught up or a little bit stiff or a little bit sticky. And then we'll try on the other side if you haven't already. So just a rub on the front of the ankle. It just encourages the ankle to reach the floor. It doesn't matter if it's not on the floor, but as the body weight comes back and the center of the shins start to drop, the ankles start to lengthen out, and we want that. And again, just making space in the back of the knee, and it might feel different in one side than the other, and that's okay. So we're finding the big toes and the inside of the heels pulling down into the ground, and this helps to free the sit bones from the top of the legs. And we talked about this before, that it's really good to see where your pelvis is in a mirror or maybe in the front of the oven, something like that, anything that's to hand, or even your own screen on here. But it's interesting to find out where you think your pelvis is and where it actually is. So taking time just to feel where the pelvis is neutral. Sometimes it feels like you're sticking your bottom out. But the more the big toes in the front of the ankles pull down to the ground, the more the body weight can be given back into the shins, the more we start to feel the pickup into that deep waist again. So in the area between the top of the hips and the underside of the ribs. So that heavy, heavy tail just dropping down towards the heels means that we can take our mind's eye and we can touch in at that space between the sacrum and the very, very base of the spine. And can we just go straight back there? So it's roughly where the pubic bone is, quite far down on your trunk. But can we feel a little bit of broadness between the sit bones? Can we feel a little bit of broadness on the back of the pelvis? And then it's just a heavy tail that starts to leave the spine. And can we just go in there with our mind's eye and just touch in with each individual vertebrae? We can just lift and drop. So there's 5 lumbar vertebrae. Can we just go in there? And it doesn't matter if there's no movement, and it doesn't matter if it's a little bit dark and a bit inaccessible. We just want to feel that the tail is dropping down towards the heels, which creates space in the very, very low spine. And then the rebounding movement or the recoiling movement, when you reach the end of that pelvic tilt, and it may not be a big movement, is that the sacrum then gets re-invited back into the low spine. And it springs up, or it feels like it springs up towards the top of the wall behind you. Take a rest on your forearms if the wrists and the hands are starting to get a bit grievous. Get more and more used to putting the hands on the floor with practice, but we want the hands, we don't want the hands to be doing all the work. We want the body weight to be back into the legs. We want the body weight to be, and the work to be coming from the central core system. So once we've worked up and down through the lumbars a little bit, there is a point, can we keep going? We've encouraged the ribs to be quiet up until this point because their natural orientation is up towards the sky. So it's quite easy here to feel the lift. But if we touch in with each individual vertebrae, and there are 12, can we stay with ourselves? It can get a little bit sticky and tricky between T10 and T5 because it's right behind the heart. And again, we're looking for space. it won't be a big movement because the thoracics aren't meant to move that way. So can we just imagine that we can touch in with each vertebrae? Can we just make a little bit of space there? I always imagine it like I'm running fingers down piano keys. And you can press one down and it just kind of springs back automatically. And particularly as we get up towards the top of the rib spine, we're going to start feeling the weight in the hands. So can we get behind the knuckles of the hands? Can we make some circles with the elbows? And the jaw starts to get drawn back towards the back of the head because the neck starts to get involved, particularly as we get up above the shoulder blades into the top of the rib spine. So you can, if the hands are not happy, you can do this in child pose. You can let the elbows just rest and you can let the sit bones come back towards the heels. And from here, it can be quite nice to do it this way. You just let the hands rest on your forehead and around your eye sockets. I'm sure this is working. And around your eye sockets. And you just, where you feel your cheekbones, you can let your fingers rest on your forehead and your thumbs just rest on your cheekbones. And you're encouraging the jaw to go back. Do it without my thumbs. Okay. And as the jaw goes back, it feels like the tortoise coming out of his shell with the crown of the head going forwards. Because your head is a limb. So your head doesn't finish at your neck, just like all the other limbs are an optical illusion. The head doesn't finish at the base of the skull. The head finishes at your heart center down at T7 between the shoulder blades. So the nuchal ligament is quite long and quite tough. So we're always looking to make space here, particularly if we've got stiff low back. Point of entry is the neck spine. So if we just let the face, it's like you're smushing your face into the back of your head. There's a lovely, lovely thought for the morning. But if we let the root of the nose really sink back into the back of the head, just relaxes all around the jaw and makes space into the neck spine. This is good. So we're going to come forwards onto our tummies. And again, we're just finding the long little, long big toe lengthening away. It's like someone's got hold of your foot and they're just pulling your whole leg away from the side of the waist. Next time we're in person, maybe we do that a bit with each other. It's quite good if you do have a willing compadre that wants to come and pull your feet gently. It's always good. It creates more space in the front of the hip. So headlights from the hips, looking down into the center of the earth. We can bring the hands onto the sacrum at the back of the pelvis. And again, we're always remembering that the back of the pelvis is a roof, it's not a back wall. So we tend to use the sacrum as a back wall, and the pelvis is tilted under. So if you're laying here on your front and it feels like the pubic bone is digging into the ground, it's because your pelvis is too tucked under. So we just let the hands rest. You can find the Mickey Mouse ears at the top of your hip bones. And if you just follow those into the center, you'll find the sacrum. And we're just feeling like the sacrum can just be drawn into the low spine. It's just the weight of the hands. It's nothing more. It's not pulling the sacrum in towards you or manhandling yourself. And what you feel is that the pubic bone on the front will start to draw away from the ground, and that might cause space at the front of the hip, at which point we've got more pull down through the toes and more headlights on the front of the hips. So there's a bit of jiggery-pokery to be had there, and there's huge lessons in staying in this practice. If you've got tight hip flexors, if you've got the proverbial piano wires on the front of your hips, this will help you to get to the bottom of why that is. So we keep letting the feet go long. Backs of the knees feel like they've got massive weights in them. Front of the hips feel like they've got weights in them. And as you can probably feel, the more we get into the front of the hips and the more we rebalance the pelvis, the more space we start to get in the rest of the spine. So you might find that your face has come down a lot closer to the floor than it was before. As the sacrum gets invited into the lumbars, there is a lumbar curve. So that dips in a little bit, but in response to that, the thoracics, the rib spine, start to lengthen. So again, we're looking at the front of the ribs, drawing back to the back of the ribs. And if it feels nice, we're just going to take the arms out towards the front of your mat. And we want the connection down through the pointy parts of the elbows. So the soft parts of the elbows, the eye of the elbow feels like it's rolling up towards the sky, and the pointy part of the elbow on the back feels like it's pulling down into the ground. There's a big rotation to be had in the long arm bone at the top of the arm. And the more we pull down, the more we feel that rotation is kind of screwing the humeral bone home, back through the shoulder, back to the spine where it belongs. Might be nice to let the forearms and hands go with them. Depends how the triceps feel on the underside of the arm. And again, we've got headlights into the axillary process, so into the underarm and the side of the ribs. We want a big headlight here. And we want the underarm to be able to be pulled open. So the arms go forwards. There's a paradox. The arms feel like they're going forwards, but they're actually being sucked back into the shoulders, which feeds the spine and gives us more space in the thoracic. And it also feels like the long ribs can descend down towards the hips, through the waist, through the hips and into the feet. So there's a lot going on in here. And a lot of the time it's just setting up the conditions for whatever happens. So if the elbows are pulling down into the ground, we feel lots of shifts in the underarms, and as the ribs soften and change. there's these adjustments that are being made to the body, but this is a body-led practice because the body can self-adjust, and it does. And we just follow those little adjustments as they happen. Can we switch the brain off long enough that it doesn't need to do anything anymore? Because what we do is when we pull with the front of the feet and the ankles, when we pull with the front of the hips, when we pull with the elbows, we start a process of spaciousness in the body that we don't really need to get involved with. We can just hang out in here. Kind of lazy yoga, I suppose. But what we find is that the stronger that pull becomes, the more potential is available to us. So the stronger the pull in the hips, we feel that the tailbone is being invited into the low spine, and then we've got this long ribs that are starting to open up. Long ribby spine. So if we feel that we're nice and heavy on the back of the ribs, can we pull down through the hips, pull down through the ribs? And if we keep just following that, and then we've got to pull down through the elbows at the front, of course we have, then it just keeps allowing the top of the body to get longer up into the top of the head, and it allows the bottom of the body to get longer all the way down to the feet. So now we've got a spine that moves in two directions. So our cobra appears from something that is nothing more than gravity buttons getting pulled down into the ground. The harder we pull down into the ground, the harder the front of the body draws back, and the more tissues have to change to respond to that. So we just keep finding that we've got spaciousness and softness and connection, maybe in places that we didn't have before. So we're going to bring our hands underneath the shoulders. Elbows go down towards the heels, which draw the shoulders down the back of the body, which draws the nose into the back of the head, which starts this whole process of picking up the top of the body, spine first. So it's like somebody's got you by the scruff of the neck and they're drawing you back into your child pose. We can try it again. So we let the hands get pulled down into the ground. Keep the elbows close to the body. You don't want them splaying out to the sides. And body comes back down to the ground. So hands get pulled down, hands get pulled down, elbows get pulled down, nose goes into the back of the head, spine lifts, takes us back into our lovely child pose. So if you're finding that there's not a lot going on the back of the arms, that's okay. Just means it needs a little bit of work. So we'll do it again. Hands and feet get pulled down into the ground and come all the way forwards. Come back into our laying posture. Remember that we're not pushing the floor away. It's tricky to do because the brain doesn't know anything else in the early days. So we're trying to teach it a new thing so that when feet and hands get pulled down into the ground, arms and legs get drawn into the spine. Head gets drawn back into the spine. So everything wraps around the spine, picks it up and floats it back into our long child pose. And if triceps need work, we can do them in class, but also it's a good homework one to do. We don't use the backs of the arms quite enough. We favour them for the biceps on the front. This is good. 10 past. So we're just going to tuck the toes under. And again, we're not sitting on the toes, we just let them go underneath. The sit bones are always quite high. When we've got the pelvis in the right alignment, we've always got that inwards and upwards lift from the centre of the pelvis. Pelvises tend to become very heavy because they get completely disengaged from everything else that's going on. And there's a lot of heavy organs in there and a lot of fluid. So it feels like it can just, be a bowling ball pelvis, but we're not interested in that. We want a feather-like balloon pelvis at the top of the legs. And that comes from feet. So when the toes tuck under, center of the foot goes nice and long. And just like we were looking at last week, we've got these lovely long toes and a separate snooker ball heel. So we can just let the toes come down into the ground. We can let the heel get pulled down towards the ground. You'll feel that in the hip, the knee will probably, from all fours, the knee will probably swing out to the side. So just notice how that feels. It's a lovely foot massage, particularly if you've been wearing shoes. And again, keeping the tail high, keeping the sit bones high means that the feet don't get sat on, and feet get really annoyed when they do get sat on. So we're feeling that we've got this circly nature of the snooker ball heel, which keeps everything nice and free in the ankles. And as the sit bones come back, something looks towards something that looks like squat pose. So we start to feel the connections of the leg into the pelvis. Notice what's happening in the back of in the hamstring. And as the feet get longer, so do the low spine, because they're joined together. So the space that we get to the waist of the foot, if we can call it that, if we think of the snooker ball heel as the pelvis, and then we've got this lovely long part of the center of the foot that we could call the low spine, and then the toes sit up under the ribs. So there is a footprint there. So as feet start to get used to exploring the ground, as we've started on the toes, but we're bringing the heel down towards the ground. If it's grievous on the knees, leave one foot on the ground, leave one knee on the ground. And as we start to find the foot into the ground, again, it's the pull down of the foot that lifts the sit bones rather than trying to push the floor away. Now, if it's nice to have your hands up on a chair or on a piece of furniture to help you with this, if the foot isn't coming through, if the hands are out in front, that's okay. Or you can just keep going backwards from your square pose, from your square pose, and just finding the feet down into the ground that way. So that when the big toe and the inside of the heel pulls down into the ground, that gives you the necessary upward lift that comes out of the pelvis. And it takes us somewhere towards standing. Is this making sense? Basically, we want the pelvis to be like the top of the seat of the pneumatic chair. because when we push the floor away, it's heavy through the knees and the body kind of hangs off the bones, which isn't useful. Hello, matey. This is good. So the difference that this makes to us when we've got that pull of the foot down into the ground that stands us up is that when we come up to standing, oh, lost my head. That when we come up to standing in this way, pelvis then, remember it's a balloon, not one of your granny's cooking weights. That we've got this balloon at the top, you know, we want this light and lifting balloon. So as the foot pulls down, back of the knee gets pulled open, front of the hip gets pulled open, so that when we come here, pelvis naturally puts itself over the top of the legs, but we've still got this nice upward lift that's happening through the centre of the body. And again, if it's good to put the hands on the back of the sacrum, we're interested in the sacrum being a roof, not a back wall. Roof, not a back wall. Roof, not a back wall. And if you are a serial rib flare, just having hands on the front of the ribs, drawing the ribs back towards the spine. And what we find is that we don't lose the lumbar curve, we can just allow the legs to feel like they're dropping away from the underside of the ribs. And the big toes and the inside of the heels can pull down. So from here, we're going to take the feet a little bit wider than hip width apart. And again, we're just finding that round snooker ball heel and nice circles with the knee. The pelvis doesn't move initially because we just want that rotation in the ball and socket joint. And the same on the other side. We're just playing with finding the roundness of the snooker ball heel, which gives us nice long toes. And that softens up the ankle. And then we're looking for those nice circles with the knee. Can we keep the hips still? And we're just exploring that rotation of the long leg bone into the hip socket. One side might feel easier than the other. But again, notice when we're using the foot to push the body away, or when we can feel that pull of the feet down into the ground. And after a while, what we can feel is that as the foot gets pulled down into the ground, different parts of the foot will fire the body, so we get this lengthening that starts to happen up through the centre of the body. Because your leg doesn't finish at your hip, your leg finishes at the underside of your ribs. And we keep coming back to that. Because what it means is that when we pull down through the foot, we don't wear the joints out, because the joints become spacious as the connective tissue structures fire and pull everything apart. And there's great strength in that. Because all the connective tissues and all the muscles start to get involved then. So you might find if you bring the hands onto the hips, take the hips from one side to another, we're just pulling down through the right side, which will affect all the structures on the inside of the pelvis. And the same on the left side. And just noticing if there's a difference in one side to the other. So then we're going to bring the feet back into the center, so that when we pull down through the left foot, Keep pulling down, keep pulling down, keep pulling down. Right foot will come off the floor. But we're looking to keep the hips as level as you possibly can. Again, if we're lifting away from the floor, we can get this kind of crooked hips. But if we're pulling down through the foot, can we feel that the legs can come into the underside of the ribs? We get that nice lift, 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 lift. We've got a lot of space in the knee, the standing leg knee. We've got a lot of space in the hip. So just like you were doing when you were laying on the floor, it's no different. We've got the pull through the foot, which opens the back of the knee, which opens the front of the hip, which lifts you out of the waist without the shoulder. So again, there's a lot going on, and you'll feel muscles in there. They'll get tired quite quickly if they're the underworking ones of your leg and they're not used to doing much. One side always easier than the other. Again, we're pulling down through the foot. Back of the knee gets pulled open. Front of the hip gets pulled open, pulls up the front of the tummy. And again, yes, we are in a balance pose, but can we take time here to let the tissues sort themselves out? You know, if we're pausing here to just notice, have we got a roof rather than a back wall? And do we need some ribs in towards the spine? How are the collarbones feeling? Does the head come completely forward in order to facilitate our balance? Can we put ourselves back into peripheral vision? So again, it's that body-led practice. The extent that we get involved in is just, what happens if I pull my foot down into the ground? That's it. And then we just follow where we're led from there. Which sounds a bit deep, but your body's talking to you all the time. So can we let it alone long enough to make its micro adjustments to what it needs to be able to stand in this movement? So we get very caught up in the pushing and pulling around, trying to make everything the way that we think it should be, based on a schematic that we've been shown. So we stop feeling. So can we keep coming back into what happens if I pull down through my big toe? Where do I feel it? How do I feel it? And what does it do? Do I need a little bit more outer edge of the heel? Maybe. What does that do? And that's all it is. It's just an exploration. It's so simple, but our heads make it so complicated. Because we don't just process data, we analyze it and we make judgments and changes based on that data. And actually what we're starting to see now is we don't need to do as much as we think we need to do. Okay, so the next time we come down, just going to give the legs a nice shake. It's going to take the feet a little bit wider. We're just going to do a change of air. So we're just going to bend the knees, going to breathe in and take the arms up over the head. And then the breath out is a good bend at the knees and a good breath out. So let's do that. So we're going to breathe in. It's a great practice. We'll do one more. And final one. So we're going to come down to sitting. And we're going to keep the heels together for this one and the knees up. Heels together, knees up. So kind of like a frog sitting pose of some sort. Have something behind your sit bones, if you have a tendency to roll back, and most of us do, so there's nothing wrong with that, but we pull down through the heels and we find the sit bones somewhere towards the pubic bone. So we're looking for, if we're behind the sit bones, we go up over the sit bones towards the pubic bone. And you'll know when you've got it because we need lots of space on the front of the hip. So we're letting the pelvis, no different than being here or here, just changed our orientation to the floor. So as we let the pelvis, the sit bones get pulled down into the ground, spine pulls itself back into alignment again. Or something that it can grow a spine from here. Very hard for it to grow a spine from a pelvis that's tilted under. So we're looking for that space. We want the softness at the top of the legs and the hips, and that's where the long little toe side and your heels together are going to help you, because the more you press your heels together and down into the ground along with the long little toe side, we can find our way sort of side to side, and we can start to massage through those tissues right at the top there. And the pressing of the heels really means that we've got a little bit of control into the amount of space that we are able to create from the sit bones into the top of the legs. And again, we're just bringing the hands onto the collarbones. We feel that collarbones can just broaden and soften. So when we're broadening collarbones, we're not pushing them back onto the ribs. We want them to go sideways and out, because at the top here is where the collarbone and the shoulder blade join together. So as we smooth the ribs outwards, it encourages the shoulder blades to come inwards together on the back of the body. And that lifts the ribs out of the waist. And when the shoulder blades come together on the back of the body, they help to lift the back of the ribs nice and long. So if we're here a little bit and we've managed to slump forwards, we can play with the ribs moving outwards, which will start to put the shoulder blades around the back of the body, which helps us to lift up and out of the waist. The trick is, the trick is not to let the hip flexors get involved, but that's why we've got lots of heels today. Heels and the long edges of the feet. The more they pull down into the ground, the more the legs get fed through the hips. They bypass the hips and go up into the underside of the ribs. And then from here, we're just going to take the, which one are we going to do? We're going to do the left foot. So we're going to take the left foot heel over and underneath the right foot, somewhere around the underside of the knee, something like that. And what we're looking at is a nice right angle. So I've got a right angle of my foot coming into my ankle. It's a terrible screenshot. So I've got right angle of my foot into my shin, and then I've got a right angle of my shin into my knee. And the heel is about in line with the sit bone on the opposite side. So we're making a box, really. We're making a square with our leg. And then the other leg, the heel, comes in line with the knee at the front. And then the other knee is just dropping down towards the ankle. And again, we don't want to be rolling back into the back of the pelvis. We want the sit bones to be coming down. And again, just starting to get into those deep walking muscles. And it might be enough into the hip there. If it is nice, for those of you that have done this before, if it is nice to take the ankle to the outside of the knee so it doesn't stress the foot, then you can. But it's quite deep on the hips, so go gently with yourself. Better to be here and resting. So foot on the outside of the knee, Joanna. Yeah, keep going that way. A little bit more. Perfect. You want it to be sitting on your ankle, on the outside of your ankle bone. So lateral malleolus is just above the ankle and it doesn't pull on the foot then. So breathing and smiling to ourselves, particularly if you've got your foot one on top of the other. And we can change over sides. So again, we could take feet out, let the toes come up towards the sky. We can have a couple of nice rotations. It's like the pelvis is a big beach ball. And we want to roll the beach ball. It's very easy to roll the top of the body, but we're going to roll the beach ball if we can. And just notice again how that feels in the connections between the top of the leg and the pelvis. So this time we're going to take the right foot over. Heel is in line with the sit bone and the other heel just sits in front of the knee. And again, it's just about breathing and taking time. Can we keep the back of the pelvis broad? Can we keep the sit bones coming down into the ground? Can we breathe and smile to ourselves? And the body invites you forwards, you know, when we try to not be so egoic about it, it doesn't matter where we get to. But also to try not to be so much in pursuit of the stretch. Get very enamored with sensations that we can feel. And sometimes we always go for the big sensation. But actually, when the body works well and we can be body-led in our practice, then we don't get... The body feels like it's done work, but it's not ruinous. This is good. So we'll come back down. Heels come into the ground. I'm going to take the right index finger in the left hand. Create that link. So that nice link of the arms that goes through the back of around the back of the chest. Sure, there's some terrible dance in there somewhere, but yeah, exactly that one. You're far more coordinated than I am, Joanna. I wouldn't even. This is good. So we keep, again, we've got this loop of the arms that can affect the back of the chest. We can let the long arm bones come back into their sockets. And again, as the underside of the arm opens softly, the ribs get drawn back, the head gets drawn back. Can we go long and tall in the spine? So again, that loop of the arms feels like it picks us up from the underside of the ribs, lengthens us out through the waist. Just let the arms come down, reach behind us. Now, if it's good to bring the fingers down into the floor, it's great. You want to take the elbows behind you and just have a little stretch through the front of the chest, then you can. Good. And then we're coming back. So either you can do sitting or you can do laying down for your relaxation. You choose what's right for you. But just taking a moment to just notice how your body feels from when you started. And just noticing that connection to your body and also to the floor. So just noticing if you feel a bit more present in yourself. Notice if the breath has changed. Just going to give your fingers and toes a wiggle. Make some rotations with the wrists and the ankles. Taking the arms out above the head and the legs long for a nice stretch through the body. And then bringing the knees up to the chest, giving these a nice hug. Have a little rock from side to side. Coming over onto whichever side is comfortable for you. And returning back to sitting in your own time. This is good. Just taking a moment to check in with yourself. Notice how you feel. Hopefully you found that useful.
Thank you, Kaz.
Thank you, Kaz.
You're very welcome.
I'm sorry I've got no photo. My internet's done something funny.